When it comes to my fresh garden harvests, one of my favorite things to do with that delicious produce is make salsa. And with just a little planning and a little creativity, all of the salsa plants that I grow can be put into a single bed. Join me today as I show you how I plant my salsa garden. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and when it comes to salsa, those of us who love making it have our own favorite recipes. In the United States, it's generally tomatoes, onions, and chili peppers that form the base of a salsa. Beyond that, it's what you like. I like cilantro in my salsa. I also like garlic in my salsa. And there are times when I'll even mix in some tomatillos. So, take a wild guess. What am I growing in this bed? Garlic, onions, cilantro, tomatoes, chili peppers, and tomatillos. It's as simple as that. Depending on your salsa recipe, you get to choose what plants go into your salsa garden. Now, about 10 years ago, there were a lot of news reports announcing that salsa had become the #1 condiment in the United States. Well, depending on your source, the actual #1 is mayonnaise. But salsa has overtaken ketchup in many areas of this country. And salsa, while literally translating to sauce, is used all over the world in different types of recipes. You decide your recipe and what plants you're going to grow and make a salsa garden. I've been planning this salsa garden for many months because in a typical garden year, I'm doing some version of it. I love coming out and harvesting the onions and the garlic and the cilantro and the tomatoes and the peppers and taking them into the house and making a nice fresh salsa. A big reason why you need to think about it ahead of time is because of the garlic. I had to put this garlic in the ground about 8 months ago. So I began planning for this salsa garden bed about 8 months ago. Now that summer is almost here in my garden and the soil has warmed to the point that I can put tomatoes and peppers in the ground, it's time to add the rest of the plants. I've grown all of these plants from seed, to include some red onions, some jalapeno peppers, a few different varieties of cherry tomatoes, and some tomatillos. I've laid out all of these plants with the sun in mind. Now, right now the sun is there. It'll travel across the sky right in front of me. All of these plants like full sun. So I want to put them in place so they don't shade out each other. The tallest of these plants are going to be the tomatillos. So they're in the back. The next will be the indeterminate tomatoes. So they'll be in the middle. I want ample space for my peppers in front of the tomato so they can get the full amount of sun. And then I'm actually going to split up the onions. I'll put some onions right behind the garlic, and I'll also put some onions so they're shaded a little bit by the tomatillos. As to the cilantro, I'll plant those from seed as well, and I'll intersperse cilantro throughout the entire bed. Starting with the onions, I just loosened up the soil here, dug a couple shallow trenches, and now I'll take these young onion plants that I just pulled from my basement and lay them in place in these trenches. I don't have to worry too much about burying them too deeply because this is loose soil and I should still get some pretty good bulb development. But I want to plant them about 4 to 6 inches apart because I want good bulb development and I need some good space for these roots to grow. The rows are about 6 inches apart, so I've got a couple planted in one row, and then in the other row I'll put other plants and I'll stagger them. So It's almost like a zigzag between the rows. That'll help ensure I get some good development of the roots as well. Just digging with my finger to get the roots buried. And though these look a little wilty right now, they should perk up with a good watering, and this moist soil will also help out. With all of the onions in, I'll replace the mulch, pulling up these young plants through the mulch so they're not buried by it. And then, as with any plant, I transplant, give them a quick drink to help settle the soil around the roots, and also to revive these plants that have been sitting out in the sun a little bit. I'm growing two types of jalapenos. This is an early jalapeno, so I'll just pull aside the mulch, dig a nice little hole, and then put my plants into the hole, covering back with soil. I'm putting them in at about the same level as the pot, though with peppers they could be buried slightly deeper. I'll put the mulch back around the plants, and then with the plant tag in place, I know which type of pepper this is. This is Craig's Grande jalapeno, and so same thing, dig a hole, put the plant in, fill around it, push the soil down just a little bit for good root contact, replace the mulch, and then I'll move on to the rest of these plants. Laying the plants out ahead of time makes this process go much faster. Now, these early jalapenos, I have a couple plants growing in each of these pots, and I'm going to go ahead and put them in the ground with both of the plants in place. As they're growing, I can thin out to a single plant or allow them to grow together. Right now, they're just partners in this garden bed. And you can see how quickly the process goes. Don't forget the plant tag. It's easy to forget what it is you're putting into the ground. And in just a few seconds, you can have a whole bunch of peppers planted. I like to have my trellis in place before I start transplanting. From experience, if you put the plants in first and then try to put a trellis over them, inevitably some of the plants get broken off. And I love these cattle panel trellises that I make because, as you can see, I can reach in and access all of the plants for transplanting and also for harvesting. I put the peppers in about 12 inches apart. I'll be putting these tomatoes in about 18 inches apart. So I want to come over about 15 inches from the peppers, and I'm going vertically. That's what all these yellow pieces of twine are for, to direct the tomato plants straight up. And as for planting the tomatoes, I'll pinch off the lower branches. I'll dig a hole a little bit deeper than the pot. Then I'll drop it in, cover it back up with soil, putting a little bit of soil around the stem. That will actually generate some additional root growth. Not forgetting the plant tag. And then we have this tomato all ready to go. Again, just pull aside the mulch, dig a deeper hole than the pot, Pinch off any lower branches that might be buried. Put it back into the hole, firm the soil around it, put the plant tag in, and replace the mulch. I'm growing 3 types of indeterminate tomatoes. A gold nugget, a sweet 100, which is one of my favorites, and 2, just because they taste so good, sun gold tomato plants. All of them are going to be growing straight up. So as soon as they're in the ground, I go ahead and put my tomato clips around the twine to get them growing in the right direction. I'll be putting these tomatillos in about 18 inches apart as well. Now, whenever you grow tomatillos, you should grow at least 2. A single plant can give you fruit, but cross-pollination between the 2 will give you more fruit. So you want a lot of tomatillos? Plant at least 2. So I've got 2 going into this bed. The process is the same as the others. I'll pinch off these cotyledon leaves. I'll put it into the hole. They can be buried a little deeper than the pot. That helps stabilize the young plants and might actually generate a few extra roots. Put the second one in. Same process in the hole with the soil, with the plant tag, plucking off those first young leaves, replacing the mulch, and the tomatillos are in the ground. And just like the tomatoes, I have this twine and I have these tomato clips so that I can clip these tomatillos as they begin growing vertically. And now I'll put in some of the cilantro seeds, and I'll put them around the edges. They don't need to be buried very deeply at all, so I just rough up the soil, drop a seed, put the mulch back in place, and they can benefit from a little bit of shade as we move into the summer, because they can bolt pretty quickly in full sun. So interspersed with these plants, they should get sun, but they'll also get enough shade to prevent some of that bolting. And I'm just putting these seeds in no particular pattern, just all around this bed. And so with plants and seeds in the ground, it's time to water them in well. I'm not watering directly from above, I'm watering right at the soil surface so that all this water soaks right into the soil to benefit the roots, and also to make sure that these cilantro seeds can begin germinating. The shade cloth on this trellis will help protect these young plants from the harsh sun until they can become established. And along with the mulch, it helps keep the soil moisture more consistent. The water won't evaporate as quickly with a mulch and shade cloth on it. These plants will mature at different rates. The garlic will be ready to harvest in about 4 to 6 weeks. It's going to be at least 2 months before the onions will be ready, and that's about the time that I'll probably start getting the very first of my cherry tomatoes. It may be 2.5 to 3 months before my peppers are fully ready to go, and the tomatillos as well. So while I'll be harvesting before I reach the point that I can make a salsa with everything, probably in about late August, I'll be able to come out and harvest each of these plants, along with the garlic that is cured and all ready to go, take it into the house and make a delicious fresh salsa. And when that time comes, I'll share my recipe with you and show you how I do it. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.